camera on? Do you turn my camera on?
Do you need to? No. Okay. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Raymond or Antonio. Get my camera working. We have a slight changing of an agenda because I believe our executive director, Adam Phipps, is joining us for the beginning of the meeting. So we're going to move up the DOTI leadership report out to the beginning of the meeting, and then we'll start with the introductions of the board.
Hey, Michelle.
Yes.
It won't let me turn my camera on. I don't know if, yeah, I think Alan has the same experience. I just got a haircut. I'd like folks to be able to see it.
Michelle, I would advise you turn everyone's camera on with the exception of Nick's, given his new haircut.
It's amazing that I kept you guys from, I have the power, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I think you can't turn your own camera on because you should be able to.
No, it says
You cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Dang. Sorry,
And
everybody.
Maybe while you fiddle with that, maybe Adam can just kind of kick off.
That would be nice. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Certainly. Well, good afternoon, Advisory Committee. Happy Monday, November 8th. Thank you all for making a few moments for me. I just wanted to take a minute to touch base with everybody, give you a couple updates as it relates to some initiatives we're doing in DOTI, and make myself available for any questions before we get started today. So with that, I think you've got a fairly full agenda, one of which is an exciting topic, which will be a run through of our 2022 budget. That will be at City Council tonight for final approval. And so,
Adam,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. If we could give a reminder for everyone to remute their microphone, please, except you. We're getting some chips
I
opening.
think it's coming from Brian.
Yeah, certainly. If anyone has their microphone still on, can everybody still hear me all right?
Yes, just fine. Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'll rewind myself a little bit just in the event folks weren't able to catch that. So I just wanted to make myself available to talk about a couple of initiatives that we have going on, as well as answer any questions anyone may have. Today, you've got a presentation, and that wallpaper is fantastic. I just have to say, Jonathan, fantastic. Today you get Zach Kartaya. He's our Director of Finance for the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. He and his team are going to walk you through our 2022 budget. First thing I want to say about the 2022 budget is we're certainly excited about the expansion opportunities it has afforded us. We certainly recognize that the city is not back from an economic recovery standpoint to where we were in 2019. And a lot of departments within the city had to take continued either less expansions or even a decrease in available resources. And that's not the case for DOTI. Everyone recognizes the ask that's on the department, the exciting initiatives ahead, and the resource need. And so a pretty fair budget from DOTI's perspective. Most importantly, I want to emphasize that that's the last year that we will be doing a budget behind closed doors. And we're really looking forward to engaging with this advisory board as we work through our 2023 budget. And that might seem a bit premature, as we recognize that it's still 2021, but we really start the 2023 budget process as soon as the 2022 process concludes. And so not only will Zach walk you through where 2022 landed, he'll also touch briefly on how this engagement will look going into 2023. And in all candor, I'm thrilled for us to have some of our partners here at the table help us format that budget. We want to continue to make sure that we're hitting the mark for what the people of Denver expect. And we think there's no better group to help advise us in that effort than this group here. So in advance, thank you as we start talking about 2023. The other exciting news I wanted to speak about is the infrastructure bill. So for any of you that had your cell phones in front of you Friday night, you may have been as surprised as I was to see that despite some last minute challenges, it does look like we're going to have a Biden administration signed infrastructure bill here later this week. So that $1.2 trillion bill cleared the Senate a couple months ago and made it through the House last Friday, and just pending presidential signature here this week. That is a pretty huge investment, the scale of which we haven't seen for many, many decades. And within that $1.2 trillion is $550 million of otherwise new money. And so if you think about this infrastructure bill, it's important to note two things. One is it's a 5-year bill, so that $1.2 billion is over the next 5 years. But secondly, it has additional funding than what a typical infrastructure bill would see. So this isn't just the Reauthorization Act. This isn't otherwise expected funding. $550 billion. Nearly half of the bill is new money that otherwise was not there. And so that is a huge opportunity for us, not only at the local level, but also at the state level here in Colorado. This bill is a little bit unique from its predecessors in the fact that it does allow direct funding to counties and or municipalities. We would certainly qualify as both here in the city and county of Denver, and gives us an opportunity to have greater influence over where those dollars go. So something that we're already started the strategic conversation around how we make Denver the successful candidate for a lot of that federal money. And with that, certainly want to just take a few minutes and make myself available to any questions anyone may have.
Adam, Jonathan here, one of Mayoral appointees. Just wanted to say thanks for coming in today and introducing yourself. Well, I'm sure we're all looking forward to chatting with you much more regularly. As far as questions go, I'm also super looking forward to this conversation about the 2022 budget today, how it's formatted, how we can read it looking forward into the future and be involved in the future. So don't have any questions for you right now, just because I think they might get answered in the next 40 minutes or so, but I'm sure we'll have more for you in the future.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. Let's see, Nick, I can't see the attendee list, so maybe if you could help me MC here, if there's hands up.
I think Alan has his hand up.
I
Alan,
just
go
want to
ahead.
say thank you so much for coming today as well. Executive Director Phipps, we really appreciate you taking the time to spend time with us. And again, like Jonathan, I'm really excited to learn more about the budget and continue this conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if there's no other questions, I'll turn it back over to your guys' normal agenda. There's one piece of caution I'll give you all. Zach is an expert in his own right and understands the nuances of city budgeting to a degree that I'm not used to. That also means that he has a wealth of information, and if he uses an acronym or uses or just simply goes through that presentation too quickly, please by all means put your hand up, ask questions. He will certainly be able to respond to it. But we're excited to have him available for you guys today, and a great resource there.
So let's turn this over to Antonio or to Raymond to start us off with introductions of the group. We have a brand new board member with us today. We're very excited. So we're going to do a little bit more introductions than we normally have.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle. I guess let's start off with Jamie. We're excited that you can join us and would love to learn a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you, Antonio. Thank everyone for having me here. My name is Jamie Lewis. I am the transit advisor for the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition. I've been in transit accessibility for about 22 years. I was the mayor of Salida, Colorado in the late 90s. So I do have some municipality experience. But our main goal at CCDC is to make sure that transportation and opportunities are available for our disabled and elderly age groups. So I'm pretty sure we can talk a lot more as the meetings go by, a little more about me, but yeah, that's pretty much it. But again, thank you for having me.
Perfect, Jamie. Thank you. I guess we'll go around go around the Zoom screen, and I'll just call you guys out one by one, I guess, to introduce ourselves to Jamie. First up, I see Alan.
Hi, Alan Cogill, appointed by Councilwoman Sandoval from District 1, North Denver. Jamie, I know we've talked on the phone a couple times, and it's the first time I've seen you in face-to-face, at least virtually. So great to see you and welcome.
Jonathan?
Yes, get unmuted here. Hello, Jamie. Welcome for me as well. Jonathan Toka here. I am a mayoral appointee, creating a tie between this organization and the Mayor's Pedestrian Advisory Committee. However, I am also a West Colfax resident in D3, alongside Ray here.
Thanks, Jonathan. Jake, I see you're next.
Thanks, Antonio. Jake Cohen, and I'm representing District 10, appointed by Chris Hines.
Thanks, Jake. Zach.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zach Kartaya. I'm the Director of Finance and Administration for the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, and really excited to be here as a guest today and happy to field any questions you guys have as we go through this presentation.
Thanks, Zach. Leela.
Hi, yeah, I'm Layla Cleats. I'm the DOTI Capital Finance Manager. And so I work with Zach and have a, good oversight on the capital budgets, and happy to answer any questions.
Paul.
Hey guys, I'm Paul Gonzer. I'm the District 6 representative from Councilman Cashman's district. I apologize for missing the last two. I coach a youth team and my assistant coaches had to duck out those days. So it was see your pretty faces or abandon a whole bunch of 11-year-olds. And you all have beautiful faces, but my apologies. If I could ask my pet project, I see so many people here have done it where they put their district next to their Zoom name, or if they're a city employee, what their role is with DOTI or the mayor's office or whatever. I love that. It really helps me to get to know. Oh, Nick, I see you doing it. You rock. Thank you. I just ask everyone to do that. Jamie, welcome. It's good to be back.
Thanks, Paul. Tangier.
Hello, everyone. Tangier. Hi, Jamie. Good to see you. We've crossed paths in the past. I'm so glad that you're on the board. And let's see, I am appointed by Councilwoman Kniech at large. Did I cover it? Thank you to the DOTI staff for being here to cover the budget with us.
Thank you, Tangier. Joe Levy.
Hi there, I'm Joe Levy. I represent District 5 in East Denver. My background is architecture, and I'm happy, we're all happy to be on this committee because we have lots to do and I can't wait to get started. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Kurt, you're up next.
Everyone, Kurt Morrison, mayoral representative. Good to see everyone.
Thanks, Kurt. Alicia.
Hey, I'm Alicia Brown. I am also a mayoral representative. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucia.
Hello, my name is Lucia Brown, and I live in the Baker neighborhood, and I am representative of District 7. And welcome. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. Raymond, you're up next.
I am Raymond Gutierrez. I represent District 3. I was appointed by Councilwoman Jamie Torres. I live in the Westwood neighborhood in West Denver. My background is I am a rail supervisor with RTD, and welcome.
Thanks, Raymond. Christopher. Jason.
Hello, everybody. Jason Gallardo, Deputy Chief of Staff for the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thanks, Jason. Melanie.
everyone, I'm Melanie Choquette. I work for DOTI. I'm our capital planning and programming lead. So I sit on our planning team and connect, our projects and our plans with our finance department, particularly for the capital discretionary budget.
Thank you. Chris, I think I see you in the chat. Where you have, sorry, I thought you were answering a phone call, so that's why I pivoted from you. Chris here says he's from District 8 and he has some crummy buttons over there, so give him. Adam, we just talked to Adam. Michael. I think you may be muted, Michael.
Okay, back to earth here. Okay, we okay?
Perfect.
Perfect, yeah. Again, welcome, Jamie. I'm Michael Garcia. I represent District 2 down in Southwest Denver.
Thanks, Michael. And then I have Brian and then Tim.
Hello all, Brian Carroll here, mayoral representative with the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Committee, and I live in District 10. Thanks.
Good afternoon. I'm Tim Sandos. I am the Executive Director of the Office of Community and Business Engagement for DOTI and a former Denver City Councilman at large.
Perfect. I believe that's everyone. I'm Antonio Benton. I live in District 1. And did I miss anyone? If I have, please speak up, but I think I got everyone.
Hey, Antonio, I think you might have missed me. That's okay.
Oh.
Just still Nick Williams, Deputy Manager here at DOTI. Good to see everyone.
Thanks, Nick. Next we have on the agenda is the 2022 DOTI budget overview.
All right, I think this is where I take the field. So thanks so much, you guys. Let me.
Hey, Zach, can I interrupt?
Yes.
Everybody, it's DOTI, as in like polka dot. Just so when you're out there, representing, it's DOTI.
Thanks, Michelle. All right, well, thanks so much. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm Zach Kartaya, Finance Director for DOTI. I am the core presenter this afternoon, but I have Nick Williams, Layla Cleets, Melanie Choquette, and Jason Gallardo listed. These people are, along with Daisy Murphy, who was unfortunately unable to make it today as due to a family emergency. These people are really instrumental in getting the budget going. So either Jason shepherding it through council, Layla, Melanie, Daisy, and I really doing the individual components, or Nick guiding some of the policy and being a liaison for our budget leadership team. All those things become critically important as we go through the process. And also, as Adam said, if anything seems wrong or missing, Michelle, help me kind of keep track of hands that go up, and I'm happy to answer questions along the way and take questions at the end of how this process works. So talking a little bit today about what our 2022 budget looked like, what the 23 budget looks like going forward, and how we're going to be working with this team, and sort of the fundamentals of our annual budget process, including our operating budget process. So these are the key components that keep us operating every day: personnel, services and supplies, training, equipment, besides fleet equipment, small equipment, how we approve things, what the approval workflow looks like, what our timelines are, what makes requests successful in DOTI's eyes, in our city CFO's eyes, and in the mayor's eyes, and in your eyes, our capital budgeting process, and then additional resources that may come up. So talking a little bit about our fund structure, DOTI operates several unique funds as the city does. And I'll talk a little bit about what these are. First of all, the general fund is really our main operating fund, and that's where the general fund is funded through sales and use taxes, fees, enforcement fines, tickets, all of those things. For DOTI specifically, our general fund dollars, or our general fund revenue dollars, come from the enforcement of parking tickets in the right-of-way, permits and licenses for construction and services in the right-of-way, parking lots and parking meters. Those really drive our general fund operating dollars. Within the general fund expense side, we expend about $90 million on personnel, and the remaining $60 million or so goes to services, supplies, and other equipment for DOTI. The general fund is our main operating fund, but there's a few others I'll talk about. There are also enterprise funds. An enterprise fund is a special purpose fund that is available to, it runs more like a private entity where the governing body of the fund ensures the sustainability of the fund through fees or services. At DOTI, we have one enterprise fund. It is our wastewater fund, comprised of built and maintained, the health is maintained through our storm and sanitary fees. So stormwater collection and runoff fees, and then fees for sewer maintenance and other sanitary underground issues. We have special revenue funds, which are similar to enterprise funds in that they are purposed for a singular use. At DOTI, we have our composting special revenue fund. So we charge fees to pick up compost across the city, and those fees build what's effectively known as the SRF, or Special Revenue Fund. Currently, we have about 30,000 residents participating in our composting program, about 15%, and that has grown quite a bit since the pandemic. So we're pretty excited about that. And then our capital improvement funds. And so those are funds that are used to make capital improvements either through maintenance, facility improvements, or we also have our wastewater capital improvement fund as well, which I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then there are lapsing and non-lapsing funds, and this is just one of those things that's important to know. So our non-lapsing fund, meaning it does not carry forward into future years, is our general fund, or our main non-lapsing fund. But we do have some, or I'm sorry, that's our main lapsing fund. Our main non-lapsing fund is our capital funds. And so those funds carry forward year over year over year as we become engaged in several multi-year projects. So for our budget kickoff, we do our annual budget kickoff starting in March. We will probably work to engage you guys earlier, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But we, this is for our operating budget, and there's several stages of our internal review from March to May. So we do an internal kickoff. And as we go through this kickoff, the Budget Management Office, or BMO, sets a budget target for us, although this is not permanent and subject to change. We score the requests that come in, either expansions or trade-offs or right sizing. We score these, and then we take them up to the executive director, and then we review the recommendations the executive director is going to make to the Department of Finance, which is our Budget Management Office partners. Initially in 2022, we were given a $10 million target, but we also received from our divisions about $35 million in new requests for the DOTI budget. So we had to do some right sizing. And Jonathan, I see your hand up. I'm happy to take the question right now.
Yep, sorry, just briefly clarification for me. I think I might have missed this or not understood. The 10 million this year was a target for expansion and increase in the budgets. I mean, obviously the budget is much larger than 10 million. So
that's correct. It is our expansion target. That is, yeah, you're absolutely right. That is our expansion. That was our expansion target. It moved several times this year for a lot of factors, and I'll speak to that a little bit more as we go along. So as we are scoring these for our internal review, our internal DOTI priorities with metrics, meaning that we have to prove out the need through the data. We try to meet our own internal priorities. Then we make sure that our internal priorities align with the mayor's office priorities. Again, making sure that alignment or one or more mayoral priority is met, and then making sure that one or more city council priority is met. And through every stage of this, we take a look at everything through an equity lens to ensure that we're providing equitable services across the city. You'll note at the top of the slide, we have the DOTI Advisory Board priorities. As I said, we're looking to engage you guys early to see what your priorities are so that we can start to align those and streamline them into our process, so that when we're checking boxes, does this align with our DOTI internal priorities? Does it align with the mayor? Does it align with council? We're going to have the advisory board be another layer on this so that we can score these accurately and help not only our executive leadership team, but our city CFO, the mayor, and city council understand what drove these requests and what drove this path forward. Moving over to our capital program, the CIP budget request follows a similar path to our operating budget process with some deviations. So the capital budget process, or it consists of 4 components. So there's, oh, Paul, I can see your hand. You're more than welcome to speak on up.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting you to call me that quick. I heard you say that DOTI is the recipient of parking meter revenue. Is there any movement going ahead? I apologize for my ignorance on, I know the mayor had proposed increasing the cost for parking meters. Do you know, is there a time frame for that? Is it certain to happen next year? I was just curious for that input.
No, that's a great question, Paul. So yes, we will be, or the mayor will be increasing parking meter fees from $1 an hour to $2 per hour. That will occur on January 1st, 2022. We anticipate to receive about $18 million in revenue. So half of that is an existing $9 million that we would have gotten regardless at $1 per hour. The other half then splits off into what will become, we hope with council approval in the next week or two, a special revenue fund, which will be dedicated to construction of several projects, including improvements to our Vision Zero program, sidewalk infrastructure, bike lanes, and other mobility projects. So that is a big win for us. It's been over 20 years since a meter increase has been proposed or acted on, and we're really excited about the possibilities here. When we do a benchmark analysis of other comparable cities across the country, we are woefully behind in where our meter rates are. And we also anticipate a level of encouraging positive behavior where we're assured that people are looking at alternate routes of transportation as well and looking at multimodal transportation to move forward. Does that answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, in the way Denver's government is structured, is that up to the mayor's purview only, like as an executive decision? Council doesn't have to sign off on it. I was just curious.
That's correct. It is an executive decision, although we did engage our council partners early on in this, and we've been having those conversations for several months to ensure that they, along with other stakeholders across the city, to ensure that this isn't a surprise to anyone. And so it was reported out in our annual budget. It made a couple articles along the way, and as I said, we've engaged our council partners and citizen stakeholders to ensure that they are aware of the change as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and move on. So anyway, sorry, I was talking about capital requests.
I think Jake has a question.
Oh, sure, Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a tag along related to the revenue for any, so non-parking right-of-way enforcement, is that also revenue for DOTI? Bike lane violations, right-of-way encroachment, all of those?
That's correct. All those, yep, all of the above. So illegal alley parking, disability or illegal disabled parking, any sort of enforcement infringement in the right of way is a ticket that the city collects revenues on, but DOTI is held to a revenue budget, but is a citywide general fund revenue pot.
Hey, Zach, could you talk a little bit about kind of the mechanisms we use to develop, well, the special revenue fund? Could you talk a little bit about the special revenue fund that was created with this, or is being created, I guess, technically, with this budget?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we decided to do was, first and foremost, the reason that we created a special revenue fund was so that these dollars would be purposed and used for a specific use, i.e. transit and micro mobility. So in building the SRF, we are working to hold, first and foremost, the general fund harmless, meaning that the revenues that would have been collected by the general fund will continue to be collected by the general fund to provide continuity of service for our citizens and stakeholders. With the special revenue fund itself, the spillover, the extra dollar that we collect per meter per hour, then gets fed into the special revenue fund, where we've purposed those dollars, as I said, for a new sidewalk repair program. We're going to maintain our sidewalks and get through some of the more blighted areas and maintain a state of good repair. Our Vision Zero program, which ensures that we want zero traffic fatalities. That a component of that is safe routes to school, to ensure that children have safe routes to get to school and walkable, rollable ways to get from one place to another that are safe. our bike lane maintenance and build is part of that. And so we have quite a broad swath of things that we're going to do with these dollars. Did that cover that, Nick, or were you looking for something a little more specific?
No, and it does. And I just want to, while on its face, this isn't that sexy. This is really, and correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, the first time transportation in Denver has had its own dedicated fund, dedicated revenue. So previously, say fines, meter revenue would go into the general fund, and then we compete kind of through this process that you see up on the screen for those dollars, but it all kind of goes into a big pot, more or less. That's a technical term, Zach, just big pot on that. And so with this budget, part of the budget includes an authorization to create this special revenue fund. First kind of source of revenue will be that meter rate increase, but expect to look for other areas, and of course, look for some for projects, not looking, that makes it sound like we're just guessing here, but yeah, really be able to utilize this fund to meet those goals, the goals you see in the mobility action plan, things like that. So very exciting news, albeit not that sexy.
And just echoing Nick on that, this really helps us align with the timeline in the mobility action plan, and that dedicated funding source will really launch us into the future in terms of what we're able to do for our residents as we move forward. So back to capital improvement, sorry, and I'm happy to keep answering questions as well. So our capital improvement budget consists of 4 components. So our transportation maintenance, our facilities improvement, our capital improvement discretionary funds, and wastewater capital. For the 2 maintenance programs, CPP, which is capital planning and programming, sets the budget targets early on in the process. The budget requests for these programs is built around that target. The wastewater and discretionary project requests are compiled and scored separately. Then all 4 parts are brought together and submitted to CPP. But as I said, we have an internal process where we kick off our own process. We take our target from CPP. DOTI planning scores our discretionary requests. DOTI finance coordinates our capital maintenance requests. And then again, these flow up to the executive director to make recommendations up to the Department of Finance and the city CFO. So to dive a little further into this process, we kind of prepared a set of slides highlighting prioritization and the planning process for each budget component. The development of the transportation maintenance budget request begins with the development of our annual work plans, meaning we want to understand what's going to be done. Number of lane miles paved, signals put up, any of those items. So we take the work plans, and then they're defined as the work or the project that should be completed and can be completed within the given time. So we add a little lens of reality to some of these things. These are reviewed prior to receiving CPP's budget target. Unlike other budget components, CPP gives DOTI some discretion to determine how to allocate the target amongst various subprograms. This process is done in collaboration between our program managers and directors, and relies on data related to historical spending, resource availability, and safety of the project. The final allocation is provided to the DOTI executive team, as I mentioned. And for the 2022 budget, our transportation maintenance target was set at $50.7 million. Moving on to facilities maintenance, the budget process for facilities maintenance begins with prioritized project requests submitted to our facilities improvement committee, excuse me, by client agencies. In 2022, the committee received almost 400 requests totaling $43 million. The requests are then reviewed, and the list is pared down based on certain criteria established by the facility committee. For the 2022 budget, our target was set at $5.7 million. For the discretionary budget, the discretionary budget request relies on data-driven analysis and priorities in alignment with DOTI, city mission values and visions, and proposals are scored factoring equity and alignment with some of our existing commitments. And so equity really drives the decision here, along with all the other components. For 2022, DOTI submitted requests totaling $44 million in new projects, and we can provide some more insight on those as we go forward. So we had $44.2 million in new requests, but as you can see, we look at the data, alignment with our mission, alignment with citywide values, and looking at other weighted criteria to make our final recommendation, along with a strong drive towards equity. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I'm really curious. How do you weight? Obviously, this group has some strong opinions on prioritizing some of these like equity or environmental stewardship or multimodal connectivity over something like congestion mitigation. How does that tier 1 scoring process work in terms of weighting? And safety, obviously a very important one, but how does that tier 1 scoring process work of weighting those different categories?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think equity lens is probably one of our biggest lenses, but rather than meander through this, I am going to ask Layla Cleats to delve in a little bit deeper with the answer here, because she's really in this process. So do you mind speaking to that?
Actually, I think Melanie might be better able to speak to the prioritization process. She's the one that leads that effort for the discretionary projects.
Not a problem. Go for it, Melanie.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as the tier 1 scoring, that's actually done through a GIS data exercise. And so to go through with exact numbers around the metrics, I don't have that off of hand. We have our GIS specialists do that. So we can provide backup data on how those are calculated. And as we move forward through those different tiers, there's some that are qualitative, like the first, and then there's some that are quantitative like the first, and then qualitative like the following two. And so, for example, we have subject matter experts, mostly in the planning department, but across DOTI, sit down with each project and say, does this provide safe movement, for example, moderately or majorly or minorly, and then assign a tiered score based on of that. And so we'll move through each process. At the end, they do all get weighted together to come up with a final score. It's not a perfect process. We're actually working on Denver Moves Everyone right now to get a little bit more dialed in and technical on how we approach the prioritization process and sort of comparing how other cities do it as well. So definitely seeking feedback on the process, and happy to provide any backup documentation, for example, how tier 1 scoring is actually calculated with the weights and metrics.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that would be fascinating to see. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
We'll definitely follow up with that.
This is Alicia. In the chat, I was just wondering if there was a specific tool. This makes sense, but I wondered if there were some specific guidelines that you were utilizing to produce those scores. Do they meet this certain qualification? Do they meet that certain qualification? Is there an actual tool that they're using to base the scoring on?
Sure. So for tier 1, we do use GIS for the metric part of it. And then as far as the following tiers, we basically synthesize a tool through Excel at this point. But through our Denver Moves Everyone process, we're building an actual database and like I said, a more dialed in tool. But right now, the way that the scoring stands is we do have to process it ourselves and come up with a final number, and then have even more conversation around what those numbers really mean, because we might get 8 projects that score the same. And so there's still much more synthesis needed after that.
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of equitability, but I understand. It doesn't seem like there's something in place. Okay.
And also, Alicia, I think a part of that, it lends itself to the fact that we deal with shifting priorities, year over year. So the mayor's priorities this year are completely different from what they were last year, and prior completely different from what they'll be next year. And so in dealing with some of those shifting priorities, it's a little hard to have a basic model that fits all. So we do synthesize it, as Melanie said, but we make an effort every single year to try to streamline it and make it a little bit stronger. And then it's not only the mayor's priorities that shift, it'll also be this board's priorities that could potentially shift, along with city council's priorities shifting. But we keep a strong focus on that equity lens to ensure that every single resident is engaged with or granted the same opportunities as in terms of infrastructure build across the city for them.
Yeah, I guess I was just looking at the ideal of, we keep saying we're using an equity lens and we're looking through this from an equity lens. What is that lens? Like, what are you looking through? What measurements are you saying to say that this is actually equitable, outside of, just somebody saying, oh, okay, I think that this is equitable because of this part of the city? Is there something that we're measuring that against to actually determine that? So that was just my question. And that wouldn't change over time if there was an actual I mean, nothing's perfect, but if there was an actual tool that we were looking at to, in some ways, measure equitability, to say, you know, that would be something that we would have to agree on, I guess, as a group, but to be able to say this is equitable because, you know, we looked at it through this lens and this is the actual lens that we're looking at it through.
Yeah, and I was going to jump in there, Zach. I'm not an expert on our equity index, but DOTI does have a well-vetted equity index, which is based on data across the city with many different inputs, which we could also provide the backup information on what inputs go into that equity index to determine if an area is an area of high need in equity or moderate or lower need in equity. So we do have a tool. It does get applied during this prioritization process, and we use it in almost everything we do, I would say. So if anyone else on the call from DOTI has a little bit more technical background on that, feel free to jump in, but there is that tool, and I believe we can share the information on that.
And I think to Melanie's point, I think it's actually in this presentation too, Zach. Do I have that correct?
We do have the map that we utilize that drives some of this. So yes. Yeah.
And we've had some discussions around this map. This map is something I think we're very proud of. We'll touch on it today, but I think we all agree that it's definitely worth an in-depth exploration of what it is, how we use it on there. But we will touch on it today, but consider that just a taste.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia. Good question. So,
excuse me, sorry. I thought this is Lucia. And I was wondering if you go back to the previous slide, in tier 2, it says reduce delays. Reduce delays of what?
Yeah, so for the reduction of delays, delays in either delivery of the project itself or delays to the resident. So things that don't necessarily impact their day-to-day lives or I mean, we're going to have some impact regardless of what we do. But we try to make sure that the impacts are minimal to both project delivery and to the resident. And so delays to access to the infrastructure that they're potentially using, or delays to delivering the project. So we try to make sure that we're expedient and efficient in delivering our projects that we have outlined.
So it doesn't mean reduce delays, like delays in traffic congestion due to traffic congestion and things like that.
No, I believe we look at that as we start to look at the weighted criteria towards the end of the slide, and that's where we start to look at that impact.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving over to the last component of our capital is wastewater. And so the wastewater request is always based on metric-driven prioritization process to determine the areas where the greatest need exists. For the 2022 budget, a total of $64 million in projects was requested. This is paid for out of our enterprise fund, if you recall from the previous slide. And so dollars collected for storm and sanitary usage. And we work to ensure this is really the underground construction of our work rather than the above ground vertical or horizontal construction. So at this point, our operating budgets and our capital budgets come together, and our partners in the Budget Management Office and the Department of Finance begin to review and vet these requests. They ask questions about our expansion requests around need and viability. They then make recommendations, both the Budget Management Office and Capital Planning and Programming make recommendations to the city CFO, who then reviews with us and our executive team, and those recommendations go to the mayor. At this point in our process this year, our 2022 operating budget target changed from 10 million to 8 million to accommodate a couple things within, or a couple other priorities within the budget. But as you can see, that target continues to move as we kind of go forward in the process. So then there's the mayoral selection. So our DOTI's executive management team makes a presentation to the mayor. The mayor reviews our requests against other agencies' requests and prioritizes them. The mayor makes the final decision on what requests and expansions will be accepted. And then a final budget letter is sent from the mayor to city council. I will say in this phase, as some of the financial circumstances on the ground changed once again for us, our target was reduced from 8 million to just about $5 million. As we go to city council review, city council reviews our requests. They have questions about our expansions. They negotiate with the mayor's office on changes through a series of letters back and forth. And then the final budget is presented to the public and adopted through the council process. So as we were looking at our operating budget methodology, we really focused in on 3 key areas. One, keeping our city running and our residents and visitors moving. So this was really our recovery lens on our operating budget. So this is continuing forward-facing services like trash and recycle collection, street maintenance, so pothole patching, responsive patching, milling and paving, alleyway maintenance, street sweeping, city cleanliness overall to ensure that we kind of clean up the city after it had been left after the pandemic and ensure that clean and equitable use of the city, and our maintenance of traffic operations to ensure that we have a good line of sight on what is driving congestion, what areas can we improve on. Our second lens is support for some of our infrastructure projects. First of all, there's a Americans with Disability Act Phase 2 settlement that we are required to comply with in 1 to 4 years. We have the final spend down of our Elevate Denver bond. Our Spark commitment, which is a $1.6 billion commitment from the mayor that we will deliver $1.6 billion worth of projects by the end of 2023. And then we also had our eye on the RISE bond package, several of which passed just a couple days or just about a week ago, I think, maybe almost a week to the day. Yes, very good. But Jake, I see your hand, so happy to take your question.
Sorry, Zach, for berating you. You're just such a good resource for us to have here.
You guys take as long as you want with me. I'm happy to talk.
We're very appreciative. Question about the Elevate Denver bond spending and priorities with that. My understanding is that bond money has to be spent basically within the 10-year period after that bond before the next bond comes up. And my concern is there's a few DOTI projects that are in that bond that have now moved into timelines beyond that 10-year span. Most notably, the Colfax BRT is scheduled, I believe, for completion in 2028 or beyond at this point, which would put it squarely beyond that phase. And I know that I have a ton of people in my district concerned about that project. Like, how does that factor into the budget and making sure that those, that project isn't delayed beyond when we can use those funds?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we are very much aware of where our spend is at and what resources we have available to us. So if, for example, Colfax BRT is a great example, if that moves past the Elevate window, we do have options, including looking at what we can repurpose and projects that come in a little bit cheaper or a little bit under estimates. We can repurpose those dollars because, as I said, they continue to roll. We have the ability to ask for the next tranche of the bond to utilize dollars there to finish the project. But we keep those resources lined up so that we're aware well in advance of what is needed and what we can add to make sure that these projects are successful. It's a little bit of a leave no man or woman behind, that we're not going to leave a project half-baked. We're going to use the financial resources we have available to us to make sure that we get these projects to completion. So when we're already outside of scope like this, the planning starts now. And that's what Layla Cleats on the call, my capital finance manager, that's her day-to-day job is making sure those resources are aligned and in place so that she has a line of sight, not only for the year, but outwards into the foreseeable future to make sure that we're covered along the way. Jonathan, I don't know who's next. Elena, whoever wants to go. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hey, sure. Just real quick. Spark. What is that acronym for? I've been trying to figure that out on our DOTI website and just a DOTI website and elsewhere, and I haven't been able to find it.
I get a little bit lost on this one. I don't want to do it wrong. Melanie or Layla, can you jump in? They don't know either. We're in real trouble.
Yeah, I was just trying to find more not project details, so like commitment or project details. And I've seen reference Spark a couple times, but couldn't find the key terms to learn more.
Yeah, so high level, again, it's the commitment to deliver 1.6 billion by the end of 2023. We will make sure that we get the acronym right. I know it. I just
no worries. We can follow up on it later. Thanks.
Same, Zach. I'm trying to remember the acronym right now. It's the $1.6 billion of capital projects we'll be delivering over the next 3 years through various commitments, of course. And I'm trying to remember the acronyms right now as well. So sorry about that.
It's Strategic Program Acceleration and Recovery Kickstart.
I couldn't think of the word strategic. Thank you, Nick.
Ooh, that's a bad sign.
Yeah. All right.
So I may have missed something because I had to go answer the door when you were kind of going through the timeline, but am I correct in interpreting your timeline accurately that there's, and I'm no judgment, I'm really just trying to clarify, there's no direct citizen involvement in the budget planning process except indirect representation when city council starts to get involved through near the end of the process. Is that correct?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So through our Office of Community and Business Engagement, and Tim and Nick may be able to speak to this a little bit more, we do have community advisory groups that do help inform us of some of the issues that are on the street out there. Although council priorities are directly inform our budget from top to bottom, are the ones who they're the ones who are the representation of their city. So as council makes their priorities year over year, that's part of the citizen engagement. But through our Office of Community and Business Engagement, we also work to hear our citizens' voices through their community advisory groups, and we're working to expand some of those resources as we speak.
Was that pointed out and I just missed it in the presentation?
No, I know it's not. It's like I said, it's probably a little bit more implied, but I probably could be a little more explicit here.
Okay, yeah, because I do think that it's important for us to understand exactly in the process how the community is able to participate in the process and to what degree it is. So, interesting that it wasn't a big enough part of the process to call out explicitly, but I'm curious to learn more about it and which groups are engaged and examples of impact through the process over the years, but that's not for now. That's okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. And then the third lens is just better use of professional services to ensure that sorry, Nick, do you have something to add to that or were you okay? Okay. So bigger use of our professional services to communicate with Denver residents about all DOTI projects and programs. And so that is a lens that we do have on this, just kind of going back to the prior question. So with that, our 2022 operating budget for just the general fund itself, the blue pies that you see, well, first of all, these are DOTI's various administrations. So our general fund, this is just our whole general fund pot. The red is services and supplies and the blue is personnel, and then broken out by each administration. So our project delivery administration, which is pretty straightforward project delivery, our operations administration, which is street sweeping, right-of-way enforcement, right-of-way services, and transportation operations, our solid waste, our utilities, specifically solid waste management. So recycling, graffiti, trash collection, again, compost is separate. And then our executive director's office, which includes the office of the chief financial officer, which I sit in. So our finance staff, our contracting and procurement units, our fleet shop actually runs through our executive director's office. So there's several components that move along here. For our general fund request summary, as I said, our target was scaled back to about $5 million. Our total change was $5.2 million that we got in expansions this year. So we did a little bit better than our target. Personnel accounts for $4.3 million of our expansions, which was 45.75 full-time employees. The reason there's fractional employees there is we do have some slated to start in June. We unfroze 38 positions. As a result of the pandemic, we froze about 140 vacant budgeted positions as a cost savings. We got 38 of those back, and then we got 9 brand new positions directly related to needs that were out there. Specifically, I'm thinking about people for the Americans with Disability Act Phase 2 settlement, some infrastructure backlog to deliver other projects outside of Spark and Rise, and other various items. And then services and supplies, we got about 882,000 in professional services dollars. These will be utilized as contract dollars and part of our city cleanliness effort to clean up the city and get the city in a little bit of a nicer state. Moving forward into wastewater, for our wastewater budget, we got $11.9 million approved this year. We've got 6 new FTE that are going to support our water quality across the city, meet state and local mandates tied to our MS4 permit, and then also under some of the underground horizontal infrastructure investments that we're making. We also got services, supplies, and equipment. So we got new vehicles out of the wastewater fund. We're paying for our annual Metro fee, which is the billing fee for water usage. And then we are implementing a utility billing system so that residents will receive one utility bill, which would be for their storm, their sanitary, their compost at this point. So those items are all out there and available as well. Moving over to our capital improvement budget. So,
Zach,
yes.
Quick question, just an effort of time and respect for the rest of our schedule. You know how many more slides that you have left in your presentation?
I have 3 more after this.
Perfect.
I'll move judiciously and quick and then answer questions as quickly as possible. So we are receiving $180 million in capital funding this year. 48% of our total capital budget is allocated for transportation projects. Just some areas to emphasize: we continue to invest heavily in alternate modes of transportation, as well as safety initiatives such as Vision Zero, Safe Routes to School, which is $23.2 million combined. Another $1 million has been requested for a strategic transportation plan, bringing the total amount dedicated to strategic transportation plan to $4 million over 3 years. We continue to maintain our assets in state of good repair, with nearly $51 million to maintain our transportation assets and $6 million for public facilities. And then $3 million has been dedicated for Americans with Disability Act improvements at the city facilities. And finally, we continue to grow and improve our wastewater network with $59 million in capital funding and $5 million to finalize the restack or the remodel of the wastewater building. Alan or Jamie, I don't know who is first, whoever wants to go. Go for it, Jamie.
Oh, thanks. I was just curious, do we maintain any reserves at the department level, or is that a mayoral thing?
So I wouldn't necessarily say that we have strategic reserves. I think that's probably held up higher up in the mayor's office. But with every project, we do build in a contingency to ensure that if something does go over, we have the dollars to complete it. As I said in a couple of earlier slides, it's a leave no man or woman behind sort of situation where we ensure that we're not going to leave something half-baked in the middle of the street.
Thank you, Zach.
You bet. Alan?
Zach, we often see Dr. Cog money coming in to the tunes of, tens of millions of dollars. How is that part of this process? Is that a completely separate process? How are those dollars decided where they're allocated to which projects?
Yeah. So with any other alternate fund source, they do get baked into some of these projects. So grant dollars, bond dollars, it's a mix of fund sources across the board. And so as those dollars come in, they get allocated at the program level that then drives this process. And Nick's our resident Dr. Cog person, so I can let him maybe speak on that a little bit more.
I think you got it, Zach. Yeah, so we're primarily talking about general fund, things like that. But oftentimes these general funds are used to match those different grants and other sort of formula funds coming out from Dr. Cog. Those would be obviously primarily federal and state funding on that. But I think Zach got you the answer.
Yeah, great. I would love to kind of hear how those dollars another time, since we're short for time today, but would love to hear how that Dr. Cog process works at some point. Thank you so much, Nick. Thanks, Zach.
Absolutely. And I'm always happy to come back, guys. So we can always continue this conversation at a future meeting. Jamie, is that a steel hand or did you have an additional follow-up? Steel hand? I'll take it. That's okay.
Still hand. Sorry about that.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about our equity map, and what I'll just point out here really quickly is, first of all, these are the projects that are going into our equity designated areas. I'm really proud to say that 57% of our new projects this year are dedicated towards our equity neighborhoods or historically marginalized neighborhoods. And 82% of our ongoing projects, and so inclusive of this, are currently targeted in equity areas across the city. And with that, I am open to other questions, comments, or concerns from you folks. Yes.
Hi, Zach. Thank you for that. Can you say those percentages again? What the 57% versus the 82%?
Yes, 57% of our new projects, meaning dollars that were allocated this year, are going to be targeted towards our equity neighborhoods. 82% of our ongoing and existing projects are targeted in those areas already.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yes, Alan.
Are highway expansions included in an equity map?
No, I don't believe they are actually. The highway dollars are managed through federal dollars, which is a little bit different. It's technically federal property. But the highway user tax fund that does supplement that does allow us to make some improvements adjacent to and on the highways if necessary. But we don't really tie those directly into the equity map because it's not really our asset. Nick, I saw you pop up. Did you have something on that?
Yeah, and I think you answered it. You know, a lot of the highway interstate work, of course, would be purview of CDOT and reflected in their budget on there. But I think once again, Zach got the answer.
All right. Anything else, guys? Well, I really enjoyed participating in this. Like I said, last name's Kartaya. You can see it on the screen. You're always welcome to reach out to me, and I am happy to attend these at your discretion. You'll be seeing probably Layla, Melanie, and myself at very least in the near future as we start preparing for 2023. And then hopefully we'll be able to bring Daisy Murphy with us as well so that we can understand your priorities. But I appreciate the platform and the time, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Zach. Next on the agenda, what we have is our bylaws review and finalization. Could you pull that up, please, Michelle?
Yes. I just have to get, Zach, will you unshare?
I'm trying to kick myself off. Sorry, folks, we're really used to Teams and not quite so used to Zoom, so I'm just working on it right now.
I could kick you off too. I just didn't want to be rude.
Be rude and kick me off. I think you're okay.
Okay, do you guys see my screen now?
Not yet, Michelle. You got me off though.
I see it, Michelle.
See the screen.
Okay. So here's our DOTI advisory board bylaws. Thank you for everyone that actually went in and reviewed it. I know it's not, I know as Nick's word, I know it's not sexy, but it's definitely something that once it's set, it will guide the board. So it's important for all of you guys to feel comfortable that we got it right, or as close as we can. So there's only a couple of areas that are still kind of sticky, and I wanted to just review and get overall thoughts about it. I don't think we need to wordsmith, but definitely get your thoughts about where where you want to land as far as the areas that we're still having lots of comments on. So as you can see, to go through the beginning, we get down here where it really talks about the work that the advisory board's going to do. And I think we're still kind of in the area of where does advisory board, these are bylaws for the advisory board. And there's a couple of things in here that are that kind of dictate what DOTI leadership is supposed to do, which is not necessarily part of the advisory board. So I wanted to throw this out to the group, and there's some feedback over here of you can keep that in there, but it's not binding. But if it makes the bylaws seem more like it fits what you want your work to move forward as, we can keep them in there. But I just want to make sure everybody has this here area here by the executive director, something about up here about the budget proposal. These are things you can have in here, but it doesn't necessarily bind leadership to anything, because this is the advisory board's bylaws. Are there any thoughts?
I guess initially, Michelle, kind of looking at that first line in regards to the budget proposal sentence, I mean, would that be a rephrasing issue that we could say the advisory board? I mean, I guess I don't understand. I guess with this sentence in particular, what's wrong with that, since we're not saying that DOTI is required, but we are requesting this. And I guess I'm just kind of confused with the language. What's wrong with having that there?
No, that was definitely rephrased to make it more of a request.
Gotcha.
But then we also had a little wording over here on the side. I just want to make sure you guys are, this is the intent, is that we would request that we would meet with DOTI executive director once a quarter. We request that we would see the budget, but it's not necessarily a mandate. Is everybody okay with that language?
Yep.
I think I'm fine with the language. It's just that as the advisory board, this is something that we are going to be doing, should be doing in DOTI. We should be included to this process. So I get where you're saying. I guess in terms of just including this, we just want to make sure, like saying like, hey, our job is to be a part of this process every year. And we just want to, I guess, state that in some form or fashion, having that there.
Okay, Jonathan?
Sorry, was muted. Yeah, I was just raising my hand to flag. I see the intent here. I mean, it's pretty clear that the group broadly wants certain things to happen. We want public comment. We've already talked about a strategy for the specifics of how we want that to happen. There's another segment in here saying we're going to comment on the Denver Moves 2050 plan, which is like the one right around the corner. And then this element here, it's clear the group feels very strongly that we should have the executive director's presence for our meetings and for public comment. But just in the formation of bylaws can only dictate what this group will do, not other groups. So I feel like it would be more appropriate for us to take some of the nitty-gritty operations items of this is what we expect to happen, this is what we want others to do, this is how we will hold public comment, these are the rules around public comment. I think those should be in a separate operating document, because they're either things like public comment that we might want to change the rules on and don't want like a 4-month process of changing our bylaws just to say, hey, public comment's now 3 minutes instead of 2 or something along those lines. We can more quickly change an operating document. Similarly, I mean, we can keep this element in here saying like we want the ED here, but our bylaws, it's just an unenforceable contract. I feel like it would be better for us to have this separate operating document that says like, this is how we operate right now. This is what we'd want. This is what we request, etc. Generally, I've seen bylaws to state, this is what this organization does. And specifically, this is what this organization and its members must do. So it's the only time we can actually say must, and we can for people within the org. I think it's appropriate for this document. The other elements, I think we simplify and just pull out to an operating model.
Okay, Jake.
I'm supportive of what Jonathan said, but I do think that there are certain things that I think, whether explicit in the founding documents that created this board are there or not, I think that there were some explicit understanding from the voters that this board would be advising DOTI, and DOTI in kind would be providing regular updates throughout the organization. And I think that I would be hard pressed to imagine a world in which the voter intent was not inclusive of the ED showing up regularly. And I think that might not necessarily fit into our bylaws. We can move it into an operating doc, but I have to imagine if we put it back to the ballot today and said, should the ED show up to advisory board meetings, the voters would overwhelmingly, without hesitation, say yes. And if that's a conversation we need to have, we can talk about another citywide ballot initiative, but I prefer to just have a conversation of understanding that, you know, whether or not the charter, like, and the vote specifically suggests that, it's quite clear that was the understanding in which the voters had. And I think it would be very unfortunate governance if we didn't proceed in that manner. I think it would be a disappointment for this DOTI board, and hopefully the DOTI team would feel disappointed in that as well.
I think there's no question about that too, Jake. I didn't mean to, hopefully you guys aren't getting this intent from me. I didn't mean this us versus you, right? I just want to make sure that this document says exactly what you want it to, because it's, as we've intimated, it's really hard to change bylaws once you approve them. And nobody wants to go back and change these things. So they don't have to be perfect, but I also want to make sure it says exactly what you want. For sure, as far as the representation of that, we are thrilled that we have an advisory board. So I don't want anybody to think that this, again, is an adversarial. It's really about us making sure that you guys have an operating procedure, or not procedure, a document in this, so you can all have a common kind of map of where this advisory board's going. Okay, Tangier.
Yes, I appreciate Jake's comment. I don't think it makes sense for us to dictate in this document that the executive director is going to show up quarterly. I'm okay with the first comment that we request to be included in the budget process earlier.
Perfect. And then Aileen.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone's seen the chat, but I think I suggested some draft language that would reorient the expectation of the executive director showing up to our meetings on a regular basis, kind of taking Jonathan's suggestion about what we are in control of. So it kind of, it's like all the self-help books, right? We talk about what we want. So we say, we're going to make time for you to show up and present. And in that, by saying that, we've also said, we expect you to show up, and then we'll make time for the executive director's report at each meeting. And if they show up, they show up. And if they don't, they don't. And that's all we need to know, right? To kind of to Jake's point, and that would be sad, but we have made time. And I think the language can be really clear and just own what we can do. So.
Sounds great. I just read the chat. Sorry. I'm trying to do 6 different things here. But that looked good to me. What about everybody else? I think I'm beating a dead horse here, so I don't want to make it too. So I think if it's okay with you guys, I'll go back and we can keep I always keep this version of this document, but go back and change some of the things that we've talked about, and then send it back again. It would be nice if we could vote on this in December, so we could all be done and not have to rehash the bylaws over and over again. So hopefully I have everybody's permission to start moving forward with that.
It looked pretty unanimous.
I love it. Okay.
Angier, did you still have your hand up? Nope. Sorry, it must be frozen.
Yeah, it looks like she's frozen.
Oh, no. Let me look.
Another thing that was down here was composition of the board. I think we can put these in here, but it really goes back to what the city council and again, this is a nice to have for us to say this is what we want, but it really has to do with what city council and the mayor want the composition of the board is. So I don't necessarily think it's bad. I just don't think you guys have control over this. Kurt, did you have something? I saw you.
I don't, but I'm happy to comment on it though.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. These are, I mean, if something goes into the bylaws, it should be something that we could actually control and will have effect. I view this as a very nice note to the city council and mayor of what they should consider, but it's not something that governs our operations or is related in any way to a decision that any of us are going to be making. And for that reason, I err on the side on not including this.
Jonathan, did you have your?
I did momentarily, but I think I'm having a hard time resolving the conflict with my last statement that I think we should keep things in that are within our purview. And my comment in this document that I actually like this one included because we don't control who they choose, but we can control our suggested vision for an ideal inclusion to help our mayor and council by providing criteria to consider when nominating. But as I think about it, us providing an ideal vision for them to use isn't really any different than us providing an ideal vision of attendance at the meeting. So I think my opinions are in conflict there. I should probably just, leave it be.
Any other feedback on that? Since we see it from both sides.
Could we maybe soften the language a little bit and maybe not offer I'm trying to look at it on my screen. Sorry, like really specific composition, but maybe again, kind of to the point of what we can dictate is maybe we will have an annual discussion about composition. So our bylaw says, what governs us is that we will have an annual conversation about what composition recommendations we will have, and then we will give that to the people that make the selection. So the actual composition recommendations then can be fluid and responsive, but at least it governs us to have that annual or whatever, however frequent we want to have it, but that we then force ourselves to have at least a conversation about it.
And I think you can make suggestions to your appointing authorities also, because you all represent different appointments. Example, what we ended up doing from the mayor's side with Jamie, that was a direct suggestion of a need that you guys told us about as your board. You said, we need this. We're not represented by this specificity. So go find it for us. And so we did. So I do think it's good to have that. You're right. I don't know the wording in here that make it like less la-la and more like what you guys can control. So I can take what you said, Eileen, and kind of make it more of what the board's responsibility is for suggesting the ideal board, what you guys are looking for in your board. Everybody okay with that? Okay, I'll take that. The last area that was a lot of yellow was around public comment. And I think it was Jonathan who talked about this earlier. It could have been someone else about the operating document versus the bylaws. And so if you look at this public comment, it is very much prescribed on what we want, what the board wants that to specifically look like at each meeting. I would, from an operating standpoint, if we change any of this, I want to be able to give you flexibility that, especially because we haven't started public comment yet, I want you to have flexibility to change it to make it more useful for this board. And if you put specifics in here, it's going to be harder to change it. So I'd recommend you don't put specifics. But if you want it in there to guide you, we can keep it in there. Jonathan?
Yeah, I was just gonna note, I think we're starting to see, and I don't want to speak for everyone, I think we're starting to see some consensus in the chat that like we can do what you've suggested here, which is keep bylaws to bylaws, commandments about the group organization that we have purview over, and then pull items like this into items like this and the above into a mission, expectations, and operating model, like something that we just separately publish and can update as a group with like the based on the voting mechanisms that are in this document. So that we don't need to like keep belaboring each of these in the bylaws. I think we're all excited to move on from bylaws.
Yeah, me too. Okay, then let's do this. I will take all of the chat, which I haven't been watching, of course, and then take all the comments on here. I appreciate every single comment. I will pare this down, get this back to everyone, and then let's vote on this in December, so we can put this behind us. Hopefully it'll be a fast vote, and we haven't had a vote yet, so that's exciting too. Sound good? All in favor?
Hey, Michelle,
Uh-huh.
can I suggest that we send this out for review ahead of time and have an expectation not to review it in the meeting? I think if we review it in the meeting, then we're going to have to vote on, we won't be able to vote on it that meeting.
Very good expectation. And so that's on you. That's one of the things in here in your bylaws is actually when things are sent out that it's reviewed before the meeting. I will send it out next week. That'll give you 3 weeks to review it. And so, and if you have any specific things you want changed, let me know as soon as possible. I'll send out the final version a week before, and then we'll vote. Does that sound like a good process, Brian?
Sounds good to me.
Thanks for that suggestion, though. Everybody okay with that? So next week, you'll get the bylaws to review. If you're good with them, or if you want changes, let me know as soon as possible. And then we'll get the last draft out. And then we'll vote next. Oh, if everything goes, if the planets aligned, we'll vote at the December meeting and we'll be done. Okay. I'm done.
Thank you, Michelle. Raymond, did you want to run the next half of the agenda?
Yeah, sorry. Let me find sorry, I have so many emails I need to find the agenda, sorry.
No worries. The next topic that we had on the list was public comment to continue to discuss the logistics of that happening in our meeting. And I believe the last time that we spoke, there was a lot of support for having public comment at the beginning. I think I may have been the only one who had another idea, which I was definitely aligned with everybody else afterwards, that having it at the beginning seemed like the right thing to do. So I'll open it up to the floor for anyone else to have any other comments regarding that. Go ahead, Kurt.
Sure, I was just going to agree with your concept of putting it on the front end. The other hearings I've seen where there's regular comment, it always seems to work best on the front end because then you're not having people wait around for several hours for items they may not wish to hear just so they have the chance to be heard. Seems more respectful of the public's time.
I'd add, and maybe we need to clarify this actually in our bylaws, but just thinking that I am very for public comment in our overall board meetings, but I think that I'd just like to clarify, I think it'd be most productive to limit it to the overall board meetings, not any subcommittees, and just clarify that point. I don't think that we can manage it for subcommittee meetings or anything else, but I'd just add that.
I agree with that sentiment too, Jake. Did anyone else have any comments on that thought too as well?
I think there's something in the chat.
Christopher shared that their comments may change if they have the opportunity to listen to the business of the meeting, which is a good point too as well. And then Aileen said, I think she might have been talking about bylaws. It's for us to listen to them. So yeah, that's a good point. So Aileen just dropped in the chat that says it's a good point. To think of the point is to have public comment, so we're make ourselves available to listen to them, which I think exactly is the intention behind that. So I guess I would say before I stop right there, Paul, I see you got your hand up. Sorry about that.
Must unmute. God, you'd think I'd figure out Zoom now, 2 years into this. I liked all the feedback from everyone. Aileen makes good points. Christopher makes really good points. I just want to point out this is a volunteer citizens advisory panel. We're not exactly making policy. And I've watched a lot of meetings get hijacked by people with weird esoteric agendas that in no way, shape, or form align with what this committee is. I know there are parents in this group. I know there's people with jobs. I know there's people with lives. I love the idea of making it a set time at the beginning. And I'll just ask the question because I don't know. I noticed there are 8 attendees in this meeting. That is fantastic. I'm assuming that's 8 people curious about the going-ons of this board and, investing the time to listen in, if not watch our call. Michelle, would they in theory be allowed to contribute to the comment chain as a meeting went on? Are they allowed to now? Would they be able to? I like the idea of public comment being at the beginning, but if a question arises, perhaps they could interject into the chat with that.
That is definitely entirely up to you guys. I have not done that. The reason is because I wanted to make sure, this meeting is yours, but if you want to try, we can actually try it at the next meeting. I can open up, it's the Q&A or the chat, but that means we'd have to watch that. And you saw how poorly I did that during the bylaws. So we can try that. The good thing is we can try lots of these different things. We can try these different operations and see which ones work for you guys.
Tangier's kind of proving my point. She's got kids to tend to right now. I think, yes, did I read that right? I'm assuming. So, I get her point. And I don't know if we allow spectators to comment in. I'm assuming if some bot came in or some troll spouting, horrible vitriol or something, they could be immediately banned or ejected from the chat. Is that realistic? Is that a thing you can do in Zoom when you're moderating, I assume?
Yes.
Then to me, that sort of seems like kind of a self-solving problem.
Okay, let's try it.
All right, any other comments? Goose comments. All right. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
I did have something to add to that, which I think is a concern that I have, and I think I see it in the chat as well, is that having that, I think the intent behind what Paul suggests in terms of having the option of having people maybe interject with the question might just extend our meeting time very long. I think that's and I love that place of coming to that and allowing the public to have that ability to kind of just chime in with us as we go through each topic. But even today, when we don't have any public comment, we're struggling to stay on time as well. So I think just an effort, it would be great to, I think this is an issue we should probably vote on since we have that ability, just so we can move on with how we do public comment. And I think the intention behind what you said, Paul, it kind of takes me back to a comment that I made before, but I think it's just, it would make it so hard for us to move through our agenda when we are already struggling with no one else talking right now. So I think we should put it up to a vote. That's something I think we can do it next meeting if we're going to finalize our bylaws, and we'll just add that to the list to do a quick poll and knock it out the way. But yeah.
So this is I'm sorry, this is Alicia. I think that having public comment and then just having at the beginning of the meeting, I agree with what most folks have said in terms of having the public comment at the beginning of the meeting. And typically when people have public comment, they have a specific subject matter that they're commenting on. And so if they're coming to our meeting and they have a specific thing that they're going to be commenting on, I would think that or hope that they comment on that. And then if there's something that comes up in the meeting that they would like to comment on later, then maybe they can send an email to the board after the meeting, or potentially sign up for public comment on the next meeting rather than then inserting themselves in the current meeting, because it's another subject item. And obviously we have to be respectful of everyone's time, but I think that they should be allowed to, I think that our community should be, we should be accessible for our community on the things that they want to comment on or what they initially commented on. I don't think that we, if different things come up in the meeting, they can obviously comment again or send some additional information maybe to the general board thing. The one thing that I will say is that I do think that we have to have some type of follow-up loop so that people know that we heard their public comment and that, what was done as it relates to that, because I think oftentimes we just hear public comment and we don't say what we're doing with it, so to say, even if that means just passing it along to the appropriate party.
Righty. Paul's your hand still up? Alan?
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe make a motion. It looks like several folks have already made a motion that we just vote on this and move it to the beginning of the meeting. And perhaps we just, if we're going to pull the public comment guidelines out of the bylaws, perhaps we just try that and just go off of that for our first time that we do it. And then this group can decide to modify it if we don't like it, but that would help us at least move forward on it and give it a go the first time. Thank you.
All right. Kurt?
If it seems like there's a motion on the table on decision here, but to Alicia's point, one final comment is on her point about the public having an opportunity to know what they're commenting on and for us to hear it, and then for them to comment if they change their mind. A lot of legislative bodies address that by saying that a matter cannot be voted on by the body unless it's been heard in two different meetings. So you would have a discussion on the first meeting and then formal action at the second.
All right, sounds good. What do you think, Antonio?
I think that's a good solution there, Kurt. I know I like that. I think I saw some other heads shaking too as well.
Yeah.
About that.
All right. So we can, Jake commented he's okay with voting and looking at a trial run in December. So probably add that on to our December meeting. Anybody else have anything about the public comment or committee section of the agenda? Okay. Next matter of business, elections for 2022.
Hold on, there's a motion on the floor.
Oh, there's a what? I don't see, sorry yet. Oh, who wants to speak next? I'm sorry.
I put a motion on the floor that we move public comment to the beginning.
Sorry, okay. Michelle said she'll put it in there. So you want to move that to the December meeting where we vote on that after the bylaws, or should we make a motion now?
I think there's a motion on the floor.
Okay.
And there's a second, so now we just have to vote.
Okay.
How are we voting?
We're gonna vote to do the public comments at the beginning of the meeting. Is that what I'm getting?
Yes, but how?
Okay.
How do we? Voting by Zoom is very hard unless you can create a poll.
Just
I'd recommend
do
we take a
thumbs
voice
up.
vote, and then if it is
Oh, yeah.
if it's not clear, then go roll call.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, that's good. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Those opposed? No opposition. Motion is passed.
And if I could make one suggestion, just having been on kind of the other side of things, I would recommend that we make motions and seconds audible as opposed to in the comment of the Zoom system on there. Just a suggestion.
Noted. All right. So public comments, it has been voted, will take place at the beginning of meetings. All right. We good to move on to the next topic of the agenda? And that would be the elections for the 2022 board leadership. We need to start this process in November by appointing an ad hoc nominating committee. Anybody want to be part of that committee or help get things set up so that way next year we could hit the ground running? All right, Alan said yes.
I was saying yes to Jake, but I'm happy to help out with that too.
Oh, sorry. Jake. Oh, yeah. Yeah, public comment will start in December. All right.
But I'm happy to help out with nominating if you guys, I'm not planning on running for anything. I'm happy to help out with nominating if you guys want me to.
All right, Alan.
Raymond, do we have expectations for what people would be signing up for here? I'm not sure if I'm clear on what we would be agreeing to support.
We'd be agreeing to support the co-chairs for next year and beyond. I believe, what did we agree on? A 1-2 year term? I'm sorry if I'm being.
According to your bylaws, it's a 2-year term.
Yeah, 2 year.
And it's a chair, it's a co-chair, and it's a secretary.
Yeah.
So there's
Chair,
3 positions.
chair, co-chair, and secretary, as Michelle has just pointed out. So that's what we'd be voting on, or forming a committee and then voting on in December. So that way, come January 2022, we will have new officers.
Well, it's actually a
for this
month.
committee,
It's a month
or-
off.
or a month
So
off.
let me just move that. It's the nominating committee. The ad hoc nominating committee will be selected tonight. They'll put this, they'll solicit who wants to be these different positions. They'll put a slate together. They'll present the slate in December. If anybody else wants to nominate themselves or somebody else, they'll be part of that. So the entire slate will be put together. And then in January will be presented. And then they'll vote in January, and then the new positions will take over in February.
All right, there we go. Anybody have any comments on this?
So
Oh.
I have a comment. I have a question.
Good,
So
Lucia.
Antonio and Raymond, you guys, if you wanted, we could nominate you for re-election. Is that correct? If you were, I mean, not saying, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. That's a possibility.
That's my understanding, is that it would be a possibility.
Most definitely.
It seemed like you just got here, so I didn't realize that we were having another election so quickly. But okay.
Yeah, Antonio and I were nominated and voted to kind of steer the ship, if you will, so that way we can get, we can get officers that would serve for 2 years. We're just, since this is still a relatively new board, Antonio and I were, are just kind of steering it so that way the rest of the board can, can get going for the next couple years of our terms. Anything else? From anybody else? Let me see if there's any. No other hands. All right. It's all right with everybody. We'll move into the final.
Well, before we go, I have Alan. Is there anybody else that wants to help Alan?
Was there really nice guys?
Yeah, and this is a nice committee. If you do not want to be one of those, if you do not, you can't. If you're on the nominating committee, you can't be on the slate. So this one's relatively painless.
I'm happy to support Alan.
I will also support Alan here.
All right, Alan, Jake, Jonathan, Eileen. Anybody else?
You got friends, Alan.
Trust me, you can't smell me. I'm not bad smelling over Zoom or anything like that. So it's a pretty painless thing to do.
All right. Anything else from anybody? No? All right. The final topic of this meeting will be for the December meeting agenda topics. If we have time, it would be nice to determine potential agenda items for the next meeting. If the board wants to hear about a specific DOTI city topic, example city's equity focus, need to start planning the process way in advance. Any questions?
Hi. So would it be appropriate to talk about particular projects that, for example, have been delayed for a long time? Like the South Broadway bike lane, for example, has been in the works for years. And, I know they got the money voted for it to happen back in, I think, 2017. And here we are 4 years later and nothing has happened that we can tell. So I would like to, this particular project seems to have stalled and I don't know why. It's a big deal project. So I don't know what's going on.
Hey, Lucia, this is Brian Carroll. I was on a stakeholder committee for that project, and my understanding is it's going to start construction next year.
Yeah, but I've heard that said to me every year for the past 4 years.
All right, let me see if I think pretty sure I have an email of the exact project schedule. I'll see if I can find that and send it to you.
Okay, that would be great. Thanks so much.
All right. Alan had put in the chat. He'd love to understand and learn more about how tens of millions of the DRCOG dollars are allocated. So that's something we can, Nick has his thumbs up. So I'm assuming we can put that into the agenda for December. Jake, you have your hand up, sir.
Yeah, as much as I'd love to talk about other topics, I think it's a pressing topic is the right-of-way right now. Particularly, there's a lot of taking of the right-of-way by private landowners. I'd love to explore. It doesn't seem like there's any fines or penalties going out to landowners fencing off the right-of-way, and regardless of your opinions on camping, that is a relinquishment of a public asset to a private landowner. And I think that the time that we set the precedent means that we need to probably have a conversation about it sooner than later.
If we're going to talk about right-of-way, how about right-of-way enforcement with regard to blockages? Day after day, I see blockages by private vehicles, by city vehicles, commercial vehicles, blocking the right-of-way on a regular basis and putting people in danger, blocking the right-of-way, blocking bike lanes, and putting people in danger. And so I would like to find out some DOTI strategies for dealing with that.
Okay. Jonathan.
Hey, yes, briefly, it sounds like we might already have a packed agenda for next meeting. So open to discuss priority on when we want to do some of these deeper dives on budgeting. I know Zach and others have said, we want to be included early. I don't know what the timeline for like the 2023 budget deliberations, when that begins. But I thought the budget discussion today was super helpful as an introduction. Like I said in the chat, I have like a million more questions about, legibility. What does this mean? How do we find this information? What restrictions are put on us by the budget? So I would actually like to just for me, I feel like a standing topic of budget every meeting with somebody knowledgeable would be really helpful for a while until we get that level set. But also admitting that that might not be highest priority for December because the 2022 just came out. We have other higher priority items that are like more operational. Happy to punt that for a later meeting. I'd like to make sure I have like a clear understanding. We have a clear understanding of some of these budget elements before that 2023 process kicks off. And I think some of Alan's questions about the TIP funding and how that request and selection process goes is part of that.
That sounds good. Kurt.
Yeah, in that same vein, I think it'd be helpful to have a deeper dive into discussion on the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act and what it's going to mean for the department and how those funds will be prioritized once they're received by the city.
Okay. And Antonio.
I was just bringing up another topic that we agreed to talk about, which was potentially having a new chief equity officer of the city come in to talk to us about defining that in our bylaws and things of that nature, so that we can further talk with DOTI about how they thread equity through, for example, that tier 1 through tier 4 process. So now I just want to bring that to back up to like 2 that we wanted to see that last time.
Okay, Michelle, would that be possible to have a representative come and speak?
Yes, yeah, I'm just writing all of this down.
Okay.
If that's what you guys want for the December meeting, I can start putting some feelers out and see if they're available for sure.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Eileen.
I don't think anybody said this, but I really want to dive deep into Vision Zero, and I'm really concerned, as we all are, about the increase in fatalities on our streets. It doesn't seem like we're going in the right direction. And so just to really dig into our investments and equitable distribution of investments, because I know there's certainly an equity angle to this conversation as well. But something's amiss, like something's not right. I'm not saying it's like, I think it's a national problem, but I just really want to dig into that topic a little bit more for us.
Okay. All right. Chris, you had your hand up. Mr. Johnson? No? Okay. Kurt, did you still have your hand up, sir? No? All right. See, we have about 10 minutes left. Anybody want to add anything or any more comments before we dismiss?
This was obviously not all the agenda item for December. This was kind of the agenda items that we want to see probably in the next 6 months. So
right.
I took a list of everything and I'll just start piecing through it.
All right, thanks, Michelle.
I did have a quick comment too. Did you guys, I wrote it down too as well. Did you guys want to take like a quick second? I'm gonna read it back out and see if we can make a quick decision on what we want to talk about next meeting. You want to see if we can bang that out real quick?
Yeah, let's do that.
So I have the Southway Broadway bike plan, but it sounds like Brian is going to be able to give you some information, get some information on that. So that pushed us to the next request, which was capital plan projects. Did we want to talk about that in the next meeting?
clarification, was that about 2022s, like the ones being approved by right now?
I took that straight off from what you were talking about, so you can clarify that if you can.
I think that was actually someone else that said capital projects first. Yeah, Christopher. Yeah, it's Chris, who still can't speak to us, unfortunately. But yeah, it sounds like he's saying yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, Chris, are you talking about upcoming or?
He clarified in chat, 2022 is what he meant.
2022. Okay, cool. So 2022 capital projects, which I think is a great one too. We had DRCOG allocation, right-of-way enforcement and blockage, and then of course equity. So kind of looking at the topic that we have or the agenda that we have now, we have 6 slots. One, and we dropped that down to 5 because we're going to have public comment in the beginning. So it looks like we can fit capital plan projects, right-of-way enforcement, DRCOG allocation, budget, and then the only other one I had was Vision Zero and equity officer. And I think Vision Zero should probably take precedence because I feel like it's probably going to take some time to probably get the right person to come talk to us about equity. So I think we can fit all those into our next meeting, and we'll have left over just our equity conversation with hopefully.
I think that's too many topics.
You think that's too many to have the?
Especially if you guys, if it was anything like the budget today, if you want to spend time, diving down, I think we probably need to pair it. I would recommend pairing it back to 1 to 2 major topics.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have to eventually decide, you guys are going to have to decide in your committees.
Okay.
And then what'll be as part of the meeting will be your committees reporting out.
Gotcha. So you're thinking of, based off the agenda today, we got a 40, a 30, and then having another 30-minute slot will give us those 3 slots. And then we'll have the 15, or I don't know, I forgot how much time that we dedicate for public comments. Was it 20 minutes? Was that it? Okay. So potentially we can do that and just have a 20, a 30, a 30, and maybe like a 25 based off what I'm seeing. And then just a quick 5 minutes. Well, since we're hanging out January, we'll have a quick 5 minutes for additional comments. So does that sound right to you, Michelle?
It still sounds packed.
Okay.
Just because I know I want to make sure you guys have time to discuss. So maybe down to 2 topics or even 1, right? 1 really fleshed out instead of 2 superficial.
Okay.
Because we still have to vote on the bylaws.
Yep.
The painful process of that. And then committees, you guys need to start talking about committees. And then we're going to have to talk about we're going to have the slate for the new officers.
Okay.
So maybe 2 at the most, but I would think 1 topic pretty meaty would be something that I think you guys we could explore that. Maybe see 1 or 2 topics and then see how that goes.
Okay.
In the interest of making this easy, Antonio, I'll deprioritize right-of-way enforcement and +1 to Vision Zero.
Okay.
I think that's in an absolute crisis.
I agree. How does everybody else feel about that? You want to give a quick thumbs up? You want to push Vision Zero to December? Perfect. And then that leaves capital plan projects, which is a form of the budget. So will we want to talk about that?
Sorry, quick question. I wanted to know if we have any, what I might call forcing functions here. Like we might want to if there's something like Alan said here, like if this TIP funding and SIP funding from DRCOG is like something being selected in the next month or 2, then I think it's really important it's next meeting. For any of these topics, are there any like gates or things coming up that we need to be considering?
DRCOG, there won't be any major funding decisions between now and December.
Perfect. So that leaves us with Vision Zero and TIP. Still want to do tips?
I think the 2022 capital projects,
Do that.
Chris suggested again in the chat, because they're getting approved right now, probably be good to know about them like pretty immediately.
And I would consider Dr. Cog and TIP the same topic. TIP is basically the short-term funding plan Dr. Cog adopts.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Nick. So we have our agenda set, capital projects and Vision Zero. Thanks, guys. With that being said, I see Lucia has her.
Yeah, Lucia has her hand up. I guess not anymore.
Comment in the chat here from Chris again, who I know is silenced. He has a couple of asks for the project review. Who should we send those to? If we already know what our questions are in advance, we want to say, hey, can we be sure to hit on this topic? Who should we deliver that to?
Send it to me. And then whatever we decide on the team that's going to be coming, we'll make sure that, and please send as many questions as we can ahead of time, because we don't necessarily want to guess. I think it's important to, we start this relationship before each meeting of kind of what do you want to see? And then, you know, how do we can get you there? So send them to me, and then I'll make sure that the team that'll be presenting it will get it in plenty of time to start to structure their presentation around that. That goes for Vision Zero or anything else too.
I think that's it, guys. Again, thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to go through this. I know it's not always sexy, but it's definitely important. So you guys have a great rest of your night. And
wait, just 1 second. One more thing.
Sorry, Lucia.
What? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. One more thing just to add to the list for future meetings, sidewalks.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. That's it. Thank you. Sorry.
Got it.
That's good.
That's a good one. Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.